Hey everyone, I just wanted to explain to you how I go through this tank. Now, if you haven't been familiarized with this tank in the past, this is a 10-gallon tank. I have 2 air stones running in it and a very slow trickle filter that just polishes the water because I have Panda Loaches in here, which are a Chinese loach. These are full grown, and you can see they don't have their black and white stripes that are just vertical or horizontal, however you want to look at it, right one after the other. You can see they're more of like a chain link pattern, or I don't know, they're just a little less striped and a little more gray, and then a black on the end of the gray. But these guys actually stay pretty striped. What we're going to talk about here is how I run this tank so I'm able to produce a whole lot of shrimp, which are worth good money. Also, Badis are worth good money. And then I also have these Japanese shortnose shrimp, which I got from Aquatic Arts. I got these Panda Loaches from Aquatic Arts as well. And then I also got these Luminatus, these Pseudomugil Luminatus, the little blue eye here. You can see them swimming around too. Also another Aquatic Arts buy. You may think these little things are worms. They're not. They're part of a root that got torn up when I was just using the net in here. But these guys are getting big enough that they'll need to come out soon. Basically, I've planted this tank very intentionally. I've laid this tank out. Let's get that in focus. Very intentionally, keeping it at about 75 degrees. And that's a little on the cooler side for a lot of people. But I keep it a little cooler. And the Neocaridinas have no problem with that. I've kept them as low as 50 outside. Now, they don't seem to breed at 50, but they exist. In here, at anything over 68, they seem to breed and be just fine. Now, these short-nosed algae shrimp will spawn, but so far I've only had 2 spawns where and it was like 1 and then I think maybe 2 babies grew up. So I was told you need very hard water for that, and yet I want softer water for the Panda Loaches. Ideally, you want a low TDS for them. And so what I've been doing is feeding the shrimp food that's impregnated with a bit of calcium and carbonate for them, rather than adding it straight to the water column. And then as you can see, there's also baby Badis still all over in here. And we'll talk about that in one sec, how I have so many different critters going. But the baseline, the backbone of this system is essentially having a tank that is old. A tank that's 2, 3, 4 years old if you can. As old as you can get it. I started this process when this tank was about a year old and started really getting into it and really liking this way of doing things around then. But what you do is you get a tank that's well seasoned, and you make sure there's a good amount of surface area. That's why I like to use gravel. There's a little bit of Fluval and a little bit of Eco-Complete or Amazonia. There's kind of just a little mixed dusting of everything. Enough that the plants have a little something, but not enough that, we're going to grow much, because this is a very low-powered light. It's a very modest light. I don't remember off the top of my head what it is, but it might be like a Nicrew or something like that, or I think that's what it might be. But in any case, it's a 8 or 10 watt light LED. So it has, over time, over years, grown this, but you can actually see how dense this Rotala is. You can see that it's the leaves split at very, very close intervals compared to this stuff that I threw in from another tank, this Ludwigia. But that's not as important. The main thing is that you're creating surface area, and that's surface area for Aufwuchs. And Aufwuchs, I have a whole video on, but it's basically a combination of a bunch of microorganisms. You're wanting this slimy layer that a lot of people would wash off their rocks and things. You want that slimy, grimy layer on everything. As long as your nitrates are 0 and you can get that slime coat on the plants, on the rocks. Ideally, if you can get it without the typical algae, you're doing great. If you overfeed, you're going to see planaria and snails exploding, and so that's always a challenge for me to make sure that you're keeping that in check. You're not having the snails explode. Right now I have a few more snails than I'd probably like, but nothing serious. So you get that going, and then I would recommend putting somewhere between 8 and 20 shrimp into a tank and to really get it going. And in here you can see I have these blue dreams. These are from Lucas Bretz, as I said. They are a world champion Neocaridina blue dream from 4 years back, 3 years back at the Aquatic Experience. And I have been just trying to keep them as true as possible, get rid of defects like clear tails. So right now I'm culling the tank, and you'll see this guy has a tail that's clear. He's going to get pulled because I only want full color tail like that. That one's even marginal for me, but I'm guessing his DNA has some sort of similarity to that. Same here. Some of them have kind of a two-tone body. I don't want that either. So you start working away at that, and once you get your shrimp colony going, here's a perfect female example. She's all buried with eggs, and her tail has a little bit of clarity on it, but it's still blue by anybody's standards. And right here as well, we've got more pregnant younger ones, and this one's just chock full, loaded with babies, and hopefully they'll turn out nice like her. You can see the end of her tail has a little bit of clarity on it. That's not always a bad thing showing the quality of the shrimp. It can also just be saying that your shrimp is about to molt. So if you know that the shrimp molted right before the pregnancy and it's at the end of the pregnancy and it's a young shrimp, you get the feel for it and kind of know, all right, well, there's some clarity on the legs or the arms, or there's some dinginess to the coat. It looks kind of gray or kind of, not quite as vivid and shiny. You get the feel for it over time, but that's something you'll learn. And as always, you'll probably have learned this by now, but you want to keep the sheds in there. And if you want to tell the difference between a dead shrimp and a shed shrimp, a dead shrimp is going to have color to that the remains, the shell that's there, and usually will have turned a pink color, no matter what the original Neocaridina variety was. They usually have kind of a faint pinkish washed out color, like a strawberry milkshake mixed in water. I don't know if that's why I came up with that, but that's the color that I would like to say it is. And then you'll also notice that where the break in the shell is, there's always a break in the shoulder if it's a shed, because they crawl out, they kind of fold their back up, they scrunch up and they pop their head out, and then they crawl and pull their legs through. So just a little tidbit. But I also leave shells of ram's horns. I mean, these could be 2 years old now. The baby shrimp that will be born will live in there. You can see that right now these short-nose algae shrimp from Japan, they're really cool. They're in the long-nose shrimp family, but of the long-nose shrimp, they have the shortest nose, and they're really interesting in that they turn colors. This one here is gold and green. This one back here's got red and gold. There's some upstairs that have actual blue to them. I've seen them with bright green and yellow. I've seen them with red and orange. So they kind of just change color with their diet and surroundings over time. Not quite as quick as like a chameleon change or anything, but They're a great pair. They seem to work and live together just fine. These guys eat the harder algae and the blackbeard algae, that kind of stuff, whereas the other Neocaridinas, I feed them Hikari algae wafers, which is also what I feed a lot of my plecos. And then I break these up into teeny pieces. That's what they're all feeding on here. Same with the Panda Loaches. You'll have to watch the episode on Panda Loaches to get the lowdown on their special care, because they're actually a hill stream species. But their water parameters can actually be pretty similar to Neocaridina. Not to Caridina or other critters out there, but in this case it works well with the Caridina. The calcium being the only issue is that you don't want the calcium so high with the loaches. These are very freshwater loaches, and you want the water turning over 15 to 20 times an hour at least. Now, as for the blue shrimp, they're all doing their thing. You can see there's a stack of the algae shrimp back here. They're all just hanging out together. They all eat together. Here is another great example of a shrimp that needs to be removed and cold. They'll usually jump backwards, so you can kind of just grab them and pull them out and put them in your box of coals. For me, I usually just keep a little clear scoop, I guess, what are they called? Dip and scoop, or view and scoop, whatever you want to call them. A specimen container box that hangs off the side. I can throw an air pump in it right here that it comes with, and then that will actually overflow here. And there's a little gate you can put in, and that allows you to keep it the same temperature and to cycle the water through. With these shrimp, I don't need to cycle the water through all the time or anything, but if I leave them overnight, I will do that. So I've got about 30 shrimp that have been cold in here. I'll probably sell them to local breeders who aren't too picky. I mean, you can start with this level shrimp. This is the level you'd get at many pet stores. You can start with this level, clear them out yourself, cull them yourself as you go, and you will end up with something like this eventually. They're all genetically from the same source, so it's much quicker to get these culls from something as good of a line as these guys. Much easier to get them back to tip-top shape. So once you get everyone going on the shrimp front, I like Malaysian trumpet snails. They overturn the substrate. They keep things looking new in the tank, as in the surface is changing, getting covered in that good bacteria. And then what I do after that is everything's going good with the shrimp. In this case, I have Panda Loaches, which they're really chill fish. Watch the video on them that I have if you'd like. They're a very endangered, or threatened, I should say, fish, only found in one river system, and being deplenished very quickly, so I want to breed them. It's a big priority in my life and in this hobby. So beyond that, just got a heater set to 74-ish, as I said. I actually have to worry about cooling this tank down for the loaches. They can all take up to 80, no problem. Same with the shrimp. But I just noticed shrimp breed better right around 74 or 5. Their metabolisms work quick enough, but not too quickly. The hotter the tank, the faster the metabolism on those shrimp. So once you get your tank, it's all seasoned. You got your shrimp. You got some plants established. They've all got a nice biofilm on them. No snails and plants. Stuff's not gonna get eaten by one another. I've got some interesting moss. This is from AQUATIC right here. It's called Queen Moss. I'm really digging that stuff right now. And then I've got Pellia or Sawassertung in here. Hornwort grows quickly, removes even in the low light, it'll grow pretty quickly and remove any sort of toxins like ammonia or nitrates from the water, nitrites and nitrates. You can see they're eating some algae in here. I've got about a dozen in this 10-gallon tank, so you can fit a lot of life into this tank. So after I've got all that done, I'll either take egg clutches I find in my other tanks. Right now the lights are all off, but in my other tanks I will have a 5-gallon tank, and I will take 2 adult Luminatus Pseudomugil Rainbowfish or something like that, put them in here with just one plant, and then that plant, or maybe this Clumpapelia and hornwort, I'll take that clump and I'll throw it in. I'll leave it in there for a week. I feed these fish in here, whether that's maybe that's Badis, maybe that's Celestial Pearl Danios, or Galaxy Rasbors, Erythromicron, as they're also known. And then I will take that clump, I'll toss it into the tank after about a week, and I'm making sure to feed the adults in those tanks for 2 weeks before I'm trying to get them to mate. I'm making sure that I'm feeding them the best food possible, live baby brine shrimp, as well as frozen bloodworms or frozen Daphnia, whatever you can get your hands on that's live or frozen. Live will really bring out that natural energy to get them to breed. Keep the lights down low, keep them dim in the day, and they'll do their thing onto the plants. A lot of times you'd never know it, but you could just take a clump like this out of any given tank and throw it into a tank with no fish in it. So pretend this is just at the shrimp stage. Throw it in here and wait 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and all of a sudden you'll start to see little fish appearing. And you'll just magically, especially around the top, usually you'll start to see little fish. If you have rainbow fish or tetras or Danios, they'll just start appearing. Now, if you have something like Badis, which I really enjoy also, Scarlet Badis, or there's also some loaches and things I enjoy breeding, the multi-striped loach. Those will appear. Here's another shrimp that needs to be culled. Those will appear lower in the tank, but remember, when you set this tank up, you're setting it up so there's zones. There's plenty of surface area in your tank, and then there's zones for things to hide. There's ledges, there's clusters of plants, there's very fine moss, and there's stacks of gravel, there's logs for things to hide in and swim in and out of. There's, you try to make smaller and smaller areas that, in exponential order of growth, so only certain things can get in there. And then if they're feeling bold, the shrimp can come out and mingle with the fish or whatever. So once you get that going, you'll just magically see fish hatching from those eggs. If you have male and female fish and you've prepped them right, you can do cold water treatments, those things. Oftentimes I'll put corydoras in here, baby cory cats, and I'll wait until they're big enough that they would eat some of the baby shrimp, and then it's time for them to move out and get a job somewhere else. These rainbow Pseudomugils, these Luminatus, or the red, glowing orange and red rainbow fish, also known as blue eyes, they're really pretty in the hobby, and they are relatively new, but they will color up. They'll go for $10 to $12 a piece. Right now, just on average, just casually doing it, I usually turn over 10 to 20 at a time off a mop, and I'll throw it in. I'll wait a month. I'll let them grow. I'll be throwing brine shrimp into this tank also. If I have vinegar eels or live Daphnia or microworms, I'll toss that in. And then at this point, I have loaches added, which is a new element to the equation. They're probably going to eat some of the baby Neocaridina shrimp. However, once your colony reaches a size of 50, 60 individuals, and you have 5 or 6 females pregnant at a time, you shouldn't worry too much about it. Also here you can see that I am removing the Badis that I raised. They're still babies. This one's going to be a male. You can see it has stripes. Sorry, the little tank is dirty. And these are going to be, the other one looks to not have any markings, so that may be a female. And the females, for whatever reason, seem to be So male up top, female down there. They seem to be more desirable just for breeding and things like that. There's another Badis right in that corner. So that is the culling process. That is how I turn out these critters. It usually takes me, it's a little slow, 3 to 4 months to grow out the shrimp to decent size like this, and inch long, and then I'll leave the older shrimp in here as long as I can because they have larger clutches of eggs, and it's really important to keep the males in good, strong quality, looking good. And I do water changes of about 10% a week maybe, and then whenever the water needs topping off, I will do so with either purified drinking water, RO water, because I'm not trying to add any minerals to this water. I want to keep this water very low total dissolved solids. It's already got enough with the shells and a little bit of crushed coral, with a little bit of the Eco Complete, a little bit of the Fluval. That mix of gravel and everything, it's enough. Just a touch is just enough. But other than that, yeah, just as things come up to size, I'll move them out. When these Badis, in another month or two, they'll be fully colored up. This guy probably can color up now if he's alone. I bet he will color up, or if he's with some females. And it'll be fun to then put them into, say, this tank for a month, feed them live baby brine, and then take everything out except a few bits of moss and things, leave them in the corner, and repeat. Same thing can be done. I'll put live, whenever there aren't a ton of pregnant female shrimp in here, I'll take small fish, so the Badis, Dario, so Scarlet Badis, or some of the other, sparkling gouramis, things like that, very small nano fish, killifish sometimes. I'll put them in here as a couple, and yeah, they'll eat some baby shrimp probably, and that will help their diet and their energy and their instinctual drive to reproduce. And then I'll just take the adults out, and magically within a month of the adults being gone, you'll start to see babies. So that's the 10-gallon wonder tank system that I've kind of developed over the years that I enjoy doing. Makes this a really active and interesting tank. If you want any of the equipment or fish, I've got links and discounts in the description below. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share if you made it this long. I really appreciate it. If this helps you out and you feel I've earned it, I also would adore having you folks join my Patreon and throwing in whatever you can, $1 a month or whatever you can, to help support the channel and the fish room growing, so I can bring you more info and help you out. Alright guys, have a wonderful night. Take care of your critters, take care of those around you, and it'll all come back to you. I'll talk to you guys later. Have a wonderful week. Donk.